We're live. That's exciting. All right. Are we ready to get this show on the road?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. All righty. Let me bring up my document because I have one. All right. Let's go. Good afternoon, everyone. It's Friday, January 15th, 2021. Today we're talking CES, actual announcements this time, Apple's big announcement from earlier in the week, and some intriguing new MacBook and iPhone rumors, because this is the iMore show. Joining me as always is iMore contributor Karen Freeman. Hi, Karen.
Hello.
And joining us this week as a special guest is iMore's own Luke Filipovich.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, great to have you on the show, Luke. You did a lot of great work this week for CES, and we want to talk to you about all of it.
Oh, great.
Yeah, more video from CES from Luke. All right. So let's jump into it. CES 2021 was this week. It's always a mixed bag, I think, for Apple fans, kind of like we discussed this week. Last week, we discussed what we might see. This week, we actually know what we saw because it is in the past now. And we were right. It was a lot of Magsafe. Luke, you did a lot of coverage for us. What did you make of the Magsafe announcements this week?
I mean, I think this is kind of be expected from Apple since the way that they tend to license. And I actually don't know this for sure, but I assume there's some sort of licensing fee to be like officially compatible with MagSafe rather than just a magnetic accessory. And we saw manufacturers going both routes. For example, like Belkin, which very often does sort of like quote unquote almost official accessories for Apple a lot of the times actually is officially MagSafe compatible, whereas other manufacturers, third-party manufacturers like Anker, put out a lot of magnetic things that aren't actually MagSafe official, but they essentially work the same. But they can also work on iPhones that don't have MagSafe, so that's also an added benefit of the like magnetic route rather than just the MagSafe route. But that was kind of like the big thing going into CES that we were kind of expecting, at least I was personally, was like Apple announced this new thing, and anytime Apple puts something on their iPhones, there's going to be a ton of manufacturers that are going to jump on board. Cases, whether that be cases, other accessories, charging banks, like anything you name it, it'll be out there. So,
yeah, one of the things I noticed this week, Belkin just came out with its 3-in-1 charger for Apple or for iPhone, Apple Watch, and AirPods, and now this week at CES they've announced a 2-in-1 that's just for really iPhone and AirPods. Yeah,
and actually, they would have done 2 and then 3, but okay.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, start big, I guess, and then shrink. And actually, I feel like we saw a few of those this week of that particular kind of stand that was a stand for the iPhone and then had a little charging spot maybe for AirPods or AirPods Pro. I know Belkin had one, and then I feel like there's also one from Anker. And
no, Anker had 2 3-in-1 options. They had, So I don't remember seeing a 2-in-1. I could be maybe mistaken, but I don't remember seeing any of the announcements of 2-in-1. I did see 2 different 3-in-1s.
In a month, there's going to be 50.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. I don't see it slowing down. There's just going to be more and more options, which I mean, competition is good in a lot of ways. So
yeah, I think the one that's going to be exciting for a lot of people, my sister in particular, is PopSocket has announced officially.
I'm excited about that.
Karen is excited about this. Karen, what do you think about PopSocket's take on MagSafe?
Well, I love it because I love the PopSocket Pop Grip phones. The Otter Pop cases for phones. I've had them for the last several generations, and I love them because that pop socket's on there nice and securely. If you want to be taking selfies, especially if you feel like you're reaching your arm out to take a groupie. And it's very convenient to have, especially with a larger phone. I find it's not as necessary with a mini, but it's a great thing to have, but then it completely wipes out the idea of wireless charging, which kind of stinks. So this lets you have the best of both worlds, because you could just pop off the pop socket, slap it on your MagSafe charger or any wireless charger, and then pop it back on when you're ready to go.
Yeah, it's really I think the ability to just take it off the whole pop socket apparatus is really convenient.
Yeah, without having to take the case off.
Yeah,
it's a big thing.
Yeah,
that's actually probably the big reason why I haven't really been a user of pop sockets. I think they're cool and I think that they're definitely useful, but it's just like I use wireless charging pads for my iPhone so often that it's just like gets so annoying having to like try and take it off or take the case off or whatever it may be. So being able to just slip it on and off and then be able to pop it on my charger, like I'm actually pretty interested in this. I might actually finally get a pop socket. I might be a cool kid for once. So
a cool kid.
He says in his tie-dye shirt from the 90s.
Yeah. Well, cool is relative, isn't it, Luke? And then, of course, we all, this has been sort of the time for Magsafe. I'm calling them alternatives, being nice about it and calling them alternatives. So Karen, you just reviewed the Sonics charger that you were talking about last week.
Using it right now, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, you really were into it.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah.
The only thing, it's not as fast as Apple's. So if you want that fast MagSafe charging, this isn't the way. But otherwise, it's pretty darn good. I like it.
I think, at least in terms of Apple products, you can only expect so much when it comes to wireless charging. I know that there are higher wattage wireless chargers out there now for, say, Android phones, but Apple really does take the conservative route on this stuff. They've only just now hit 15 watts, and that's only through their MagSafe chargers.
Right.
So, I mean, it's good enough for going to sleep at night and leaving it on your charger overnight.
Yeah, or just having it sitting on your desk.
Yeah, because the MagSafe wireless chargers, even you can, Karen, I saw you have yours on the stand, so this isn't exactly applicable to that. But if you're just using the regular charger, you can just pick it up and keep using it while it's wirelessly charging.
Right, of course.
Yeah,
I do it that way too.
Yeah, the other thing that stood out to me actually was another Belkin product. They have these, I think they're called Soundform Freedom True Wireless Earbuds. The reason that these are fascinating, these are Belkin's totally not AirPod Pro ripoffs. But what actually is really interesting about these is these are the first earbuds that use Apple's third-party integration into the Find My app. Up till now, Find My has been Apple product exclusive. And with these earbuds, you can put them into Find My. That's great. Apple first announced this last summer, and it's finally coming to fruition in the first product.
That's a big deal.
It is a big deal.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Luke.
Especially since we all know that at least at some point AirTags are supposed to be coming. I know we've been saying that for about a year now, but kind of the more functionality they add to Find My and the more products that get in there, I think it's just going to build up that ecosystem for that kind of for that particular software so much that it's going to be so much more useful for people rather than just Apple products.
Yeah, it's actually really smart of Apple to expand that ability to other products because it just locks you into Apple even more.
Mm-hmm.
Totally. You still have to have something Apple in order to be able to find my thing, whatever it is, you have to have an iPhone or a MacBook. So, if you have 100 products that you're tracking, you're never going to get rid of your Apple something to keep track of everything.
Yeah. And speaking of tracking things, just to divert away from CES for a second, Samsung announced this week, I think they're called the Galaxy Smart Tags. So Samsung has its own tracking tags out. Where are you at, Apple? Come on.
I gotta say, I figured, let's be honest, both Apple and Samsung often parallel each other. Whoever comes first is up for debate. It depends on each product, I think. But So it's no surprise to me that Samsung was working on something like this, or that it was eventually going to come. But I am kind of surprised seeing how long we've heard about AirTags, and we know that they're coming at some point. We've seen little instances of mentions of AirTags in beta software and stuff in the past, and it's kind of surprising to me that Samsung kind of beat Apple to the punch here. I don't think it's a big deal in the grand scheme of things, but I feel like it's interesting that Apple didn't get the jump. I don't know exactly what's happening. It could be lots of reasons why the production has slowed down. It could be production. It could be R&D. Like, we're not entirely sure where the process was necessarily held up. But I find it interesting that Samsung kind of beat them to the punch.
Yeah. Well, Apple doesn't necessarily like to be first. Apple likes to come in second with something better.
Totally. So it's not, like I said, in the grand scheme of things, I don't think it doesn't hurt Apple in any way. Since we've been here, maybe it's just because it's something we've been hearing about for so long that it just, you really think that they were going to come out and kind of make like a bigger splash about it, I guess, by now. Maybe that's where my disconnect is. Yeah, it's been a long time.
Yeah, we've been hearing about AirTags for about a year. I think it was this week, there was mention of AirTags in beta code for iOS 14.4.
Yeah.
And that's
but we don't know how COVID has affected the R&D on stuff like that.
Yeah, totally right.
I think the more recent rumors suggested that the delay really had to do with Apple doesn't know how to sell these right now. Like, if things were normal, we might already have them, but it's still
because no one's going anywhere.
Yeah, no one's going anywhere.
No one's losing things. Apple, I would like to say that I lose my keys in my small apartment at least once a day. So, like, you have one customer at least. Just release them, Apple. I'm here for it.
You got to train yourself to put your keys in the same place every time. And just never allow yourself to put them elsewhere. Or like 2 or 3 places, but nowhere else.
I've been trying. It just never happens.
They get lost from the place you choose.
Yeah, totally. Right.
Yeah.
And then you do that thing. You do that thing where you're like, I'm going to put them in this very specific place, this like different place, because I'm going to remember that when I go to look for them. And then you never do.
Yeah. If I attempt a second place, I never remember it ever.
I'm telling you, I need AirTags. I seriously am so klutzy and so forgetful with my stuff. Like, the amount of times I've had to like go back to a restaurant because I left my wallet on the table is like absurd.
Well, you're the target demographic.
I am. I've been looking. It's funny, for the past year, I've been like looking at Tile and being like, I could just get these now. But like, I kind of want to see what Apple's going to do with AirTags. So I've just kind of been like putting it off because I'm just curious, because I'm so obviously hooked into the Apple ecosystem that I feel like it's going to be more useful to me if I actually wait. But at the same time, I keep losing my keys, so I don't know.
we're coming down to the wire here, Apple. Luke really needs to be able to find his keys.
Yeah, save me for myself.
Yeah, and actually, Tile is, now that Samsung has come out with their tags. Excuse me, I do worry about companies like Chipolo and Tile that have these third-party trackers. Like, how viable are they in the future? Like, Tile's already mad at Apple.
Sure, yeah.
Over this, even with the ability to integrate into the Find My app. I don't know if they're still suing Apple, but at one point they sued Apple for anti-competitive behavior for a product that technically doesn't exist yet.
That's going to be a tough case to win.
Yeah, and now Samsung's out there. So we got Samsung and Apple, the 2 biggest phone makers in the world. And these poor tiny companies.
Well, let's see how good they actually are.
This is the question.
When they come out.
And we talked about this last week. Tile is rumored to be making an ultra-wideband version of the Tile tracker, which is presumably the technology that AirTags will use.
Mm-hmm. Totally.
Yeah.
I mean, Tile. Sorry, Karen, go on.
I was just going to say the Find My app has limited usefulness. Like Chris Seelbeck mentions in the comments that he still can't find his AirPod Pros. Same thing happened to my son. It's if they're not on, you can't find my, whatever it is. So the AirTags presumably will work. No, you don't need it. They don't have to have anything being on. I mean, obviously, like with keys or something, there's something to be on. So it could be a lot better than just the Find My functionality.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
I might be a bit behind on this, but maybe you guys know. Has Tile actually? Are they getting into Find My? Have they gotten into that yet? Are they going to be able to?
I haven't heard anything yet.
Because it would be interesting if Apple let them. You think like they wouldn't, based on the fact that they're obviously coming out with a competing product. But at the same time, like Karen said, locking people into that ecosystem, it's like you eventually need to replace your tiles. Some of them have replaceable batteries, some of them don't, though. And you eventually need to replace them, right? Well, if I'm on tile now and I'm using Find My because it happens to be locked into that, and then I need to buy another tracker for whether it's another item or it's because this one needs to be replaced, like then do you start looking like, well, I mean, if I'm already in Apple, doesn't Apple already have AirTags? Like what's keeping me with Tile? So it's an interesting concept to see what would happen, especially with the ultra wideband Tile that's rumored to be in production or in some sort of process.
Well, we'll see. We'll have a lot to talk about when it actually comes out.
When?
Yeah.
I hope it's a when and not an if.
Yeah.
At this point, it better be. All right. Now, swinging back to CES, I got to tell you, I want to shout out a particular product that sings to my heart, and that is this new stand from Kensington. It's called the Studio Dock, and it's the iPad stand of my dreams.
Is it? Because it looks like that your iPad is stuck at a 90-degree angle. Does it have any flex to it?
That's a good question. I don't actually know, but what it does have is rotation.
Okay.
So you can rotate it.
That's good, but
you can rotate. Yeah.
I don't know. I like to have the option for like a slightly different angle.
But one of the things, so this stand actually plugs into. That's fun. I actually didn't realize this before. This stand plugs into the USB-C slot, but it also has an optional. I think it's an optional Apple Watch charger that you can clip onto the plug that goes into your iPad. So for those that don't know about this product, it is like an aluminum stand that plugs into your iPad Pro or iPad Air, and it's got through the USB-C port, and it has like USB-A ports and a headphone jack on the back, so you can plug in other accessories. But it also has a wireless charging pad for two devices, so an iPhone and AirPods. And you can also evidently clip an Apple Watch charger to the plug-in port. And so you can charge all three of those devices while you're also charging your iPad in a central location. And you've got a keyboard and maybe a trackpad hooked up to it. It seems to be the ultimate iPad as a desktop device. And more like this, accessory manufacturers.
Yeah, it sounds like it has everything you could want.
Everything I could want, certainly. Yes.
Yeah, I kind of agree with Karen. I actually was just quickly looking through the site, and it seems like it doesn't specifically say about viewing angles, but I think it can adjust by some of the pictures I've seen on the Kensington website. But it does look like it doesn't have a ton of adjustability in terms of tilting. Which may or may not be okay depending on what you want to use for it. Like it seems like it'd be really hard to draw on if you're going to try and draw it, right in front of you all the time. But otherwise, I agree with Joe. Like I think it has pretty much everything you could want in an iPad stand. I think it's really awesome if you're using it next to your Mac or as like with Sidecar as a additional monitor. I think it's actually really, really awesome for that application. And I know that there's, Sidecar has been like kind of an amazing thing since it's come out in terms of being able to make your iPad a second screen. So I think it definitely has potential. It looks really good. The construction looks nice. I like that it has, all those the ports in the back. So it also kind of functions as like a USB-C hub, which I think is great. And yeah, it seems like it hits most of the right buttons for a lot of people.
It's an all-in-one.
Yeah, it turns your iPad into an iMac Mini.
Yeah.
This is what we need. And And yeah, actually, Karen, I was just looking at it on the website, and it does look like it tilts quite a bit. I don't think it'll tilt horizontally.
Yeah, no, it doesn't need to be horizontal. It doesn't need to be horizontal, but just enough tilt so like if there's a glare, you can just adjust the angle a little bit.
Yeah, it's certainly not. It certainly doesn't stay at 90 degrees.
Oh, that sounds great.
Yeah, and it's
Sign
got
us
a
all
look.
up.
Yeah. And so let's see in terms of the actual ports it has for you. It has, I think it's three. Yeah, it's 3 USB-A ports, an HDMI port, an Ethernet port, headphone jack, and there is, thankfully, an SD card reader on one of the sides, and a USB-C port for power. So it is stocked.
Nice.
Mhm.
There were some neat accessories at CES this year. One of the things that actually surprised me is that there wasn't a lot in the way of HomeKit. There was some, but I think in terms of Apple's protocols, the big attention this year was on AirPlay. Like you're going to do AirPlay to Dolby Atmos equipped soundbar from Denon and another soundbar from JBL. There was a lot of AirPlay 2. There's a 4K projector with AirPlay 2 coming from, I think it's LG. Yeah,
that looks really cool. It's like super expensive.
Yeah,
HU 810p. So if you've got $3,000 lying around and you want a projector instead of, say, I don't know, a $1,000 4K TV with HDR, this projector can be yours.
Yeah, it's hard to understand why a projector would cost more than a TV.
I think it probably has to do with miniaturization. It usually does. But yeah, it was a bigger. I do think that's fascinating. It was a bigger year for AirPlay 2 than HomeKit. HomeKit is usually has a decent showing at CES, especially since Apple moved from sort of hardware only verification and security for HomeKit devices to supporting software security.
I feel like there's just not nearly enough HomeKit stuff out there.
Yeah,
it just hasn't caught on for some reason. It's been what, 2-3 years? There's not. I don't think I own anything that's HomeKit enabled.
I think it got a nice boost after Apple made the sort of security protocol switch.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it had a nice a peak, and then it's just kind of a trickle nowadays. Mm-hmm. There are a lot of certain kinds of HomeKit products, but
Philips Hue, the lights.
Yeah,
the Nano Leaf. There's lots of lights.
And there's a decent amount of security.
Security,
home
cameras,
security, and doorbells and things like that.
Lights, locks, and that sort of thing. I think one of the ones that one of our contributors was talking to me about was, I think it's a humidifier. There's this week that someone announced a HomeKit compatible humidifier, which that's just wild to me.
The Internet of Things, eventually, everything.
The Internet of everything.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, it's CES. It's never the most exciting thing on the Apple front, but it's always interesting to see what accessory makers are coming out with, especially in between Apple announcements.
Yeah, Stephen Perry asked in the comments if there's something in particular that we want to see in the HomeKit arena. I don't know. I can't think of anything. I want to be shocked and amazed. I don't know.
Yeah.
Can you guys think of anything that you would want?
Nothing in particular. I mean, I like, I don't have any, but I like the look of a lot of the HomeKit smart locks, like the August lock and that sort of thing. But those have been around for a little while. I'm kind of with you, Karen, though. I want to be shocked and amazed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think when it comes to this is thinking way far in the future, but I'm kind of interested to see how HomeKit, if at all, and this might be a weird thing for me to say, but will integrate with the Apple Car. Is it going to be able to start your car? Are you going to even need a command start in Apple Car? Probably not, right? is it going to be like, is your iPhone going to control your Apple Car, except for when you're actually driving it, obviously?
Well, but that could be coming too.
Right? Who knows? Maybe it's a completely autonomous car.
Cars.
Right? And we're just going to get into it, and there's just going to be Apple ads all over the ceiling.
Yeah, I would definitely like to see that integration, starting with remote start. Just being able to go like on a cold day. We all live in climates where it would be nice to be able to start your car before you get into it by several minutes.
Actually, you know what, Stephen? I've got a category that I want to see in HomeKit. Very smart kitchen appliances. I want to watch my toast from my iPhone.
Yeah, we just renovated our kitchen. We got all new appliances, and they're smart appliances from LG, and we cannot get a single one of them to connect to the app. So they're not smart at all. They're kind of stupid, actually. I feel like if maybe they connected to HomeKit, they might actually work.
Well, see, and that's what's interesting about HomeKit. So a while back, Apple and Google and Amazon and actually a bunch of other home automation focused companies announced sort of an alliance of smart home accessories, and they were I think the idea is they'd create like a single protocol that all of their different gadgets would work with, and you could use it with the Home app or whatever. I don't actually know if Google has an equivalent of the Home app, or you'd use the Samsung Smart Things app or things like that. And I wonder if that's actually going to come to fruition. My guess is no, but I may hope.
Yeah, I feel like we have a ways to go.
Yeah. All right. Before we continue, I want to talk to you about today's sponsor of the iMore Show. Today's episode of the iMore Show is brought to you by Fight Camp. Fight Camp brings the boxing gym into your home, offering a mix of cardio and conditioning workouts for a full body workout through boxing and kickboxing. If you've ever wanted to learn how to kickbox or keep up with your existing martial arts practice at home, or even wanted to get your kids involved in something fun and safe, Fight Camp is a great solution for you. It's made for a wide range of athletes, beginner and veteran alike, who are looking for a great home workout. Fight Camp comes with the gear you'll need, including a freestanding punching bag and boxing gloves, as well as Fight Camp's hand wraps, which include their punch tracking sensors, which will give you all sorts of stats on the force and speed of your punches through the Fight Camp app on your iPhone. And because the Fight Camp system has no weights or complicated equipment, it's also safe for kids to use. Everything really centers around the Fight Camp app, which comes with over 600 workouts and tutorials, and there are 12 new courses released every week. All of the courses in the app are taught by 6 trainers that each have actual fight experience. Fight Camp offers financing, so you can pay over 24 months and get your new gym now. And Fight Camp offers a 30-day money-back guarantee. Just go to joinfightcamp.com/iMore. That's right. Give Fight Camp a try, and within 30 days, if you don't love it, send it back and get a refund. Fight Camp is the new way to work out at home. Make a change and join the community that teaches you the art of boxing while following the most intense workouts that are as quick as 15 minutes. To get free shipping on Fight Camp, just go to joinfightcamp.com/iMore. That's joinfightcamp.com/IMORE. Thank you to Fight Camp for sponsoring this week's episode of the iMore Show. All right. So, CES is in the bag. Until next year, when maybe some of us will actually get to go to Las Vegas. Who knows?
Maybe. Just maybe.
Yeah. For those that didn't know, this year's show was completely virtual. You may have already figured that. But moving on from CES, Apple also had an announcement this week. It wasn't a product announcement. People were speculating, is it, there had been rumors about Apple talking to Hyundai about the Apple car. Or is this the week AirTags are finally coming out during CES? Oh, that's just like Apple, things like that. But no, this actually goes back to an announcement Apple made last year in the wake of protests for racial justice across the United States. Apple had announced its Racial Equality and Justice Initiative, where it would spend, I think they had marked 100 billion, or not 100 billion, that's some world changing money, $100 million for projects that would, go towards the goal of expanding awareness of the need for greater racial equality and justice reform and things like that. And this week they announced where some of that money is going. They announced, I think it was two new initiatives. So Karen, do you mind taking us through this a little bit?
Yeah, so there's an initiative in historically Black colleges and universities, and another one in Detroit schools. It sounds like a higher, like high school age, where they're going to be getting kids who are interested in technology, getting them tools for education, for STEM education and coding and all that kind of thing. Which I think is amazing, and I hope that it expands to even younger grades, because I think I'm as an educator myself, I think the younger you can start getting this technology into kids' hands and get them excited about it, the better. So this is a great start, starting at the college and high school level, but I certainly hope it goes younger.
Yeah. It's kind of like learning any sort of language. The younger you can start, the easier it is to grasp, and the older you are, the harder it is to grasp.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
There's actually a critical learning period for languages that closes at about 12. So that's why if you know people who are bilingual, the ones that grew up speaking a language before they were 12, they can speak both languages fluently without any accent or anything. But if you start learning after 12, no matter how intensely you study it, no matter how much you immerse, even if you move to another country and you completely stop using your native language, you're never going to have the same fluency, unaccented fluency. So yeah, absolutely, 12 is the sort of the magical age there. So yeah, younger is better.
Yeah. So what do we think about this? This is, I think it's easy to be cynical about Apple and a lot of the moves Apple makes, like the chargers in last year's iPhones, or rather not in last year's iPhones. They said it was about the environment. I think we all know, sure, maybe, but really it's about saving Apple money. It's always about saving Apple money. But when you look at things like this, they absolutely don't have to do things like this, and yet they do. And I think it's a good move.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Kind of like Joe said, it's easy to be cynical, honestly, about Apple or any really company in general, because companies do exist to make their investors money and to kind of increase their bottom line. And that's not always very conducive to real, meaningful, charitable work. And of course, there's some companies that are much better at that than others. But I think that Apple is, especially when it comes to, racial equity and inequality as it is now, is really trying to sort of be a leader in this field. And I think it's only gonna have a net positive impact on not only just people's lives, but also Apple in general. So I think it's obviously a very smart, but very compassionate move from Apple that I think is, I wish more companies would kind of lean into stuff like this more often.
Absolutely. And also, this just benefits everybody, because when you tap into a whole untapped market, you've got this whole talent pool that has traditionally not been accessed, and Apple's helping to activate that. So I think it's great.
Yeah, definitely. And, I think it feels like Apple, especially in the last couple of weeks, because, things have been happening, especially in the US, like Apple's been a little more, like since last year, especially, it's been a little more socially conscious on that end of things. I mean, they do a lot of work around the environment. That's true. But ever since last year, since the protests and all of that, it does feel like they've been more outspoken about certain political matters. Like, last week, not to really get into it, but they kicked Parler off the App Store. And that's, there's no way to spin that as not a political move, but there's no way to spin Parler as not a political app, and they weren't they weren't moderating their content. I think we've seen that, especially, and they weren't securing their content. I mean, now that's another reason to kick an app off in the App Store if it's just not securing its users' content and just leaving it out there for people to find.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's very interesting to see companies like Apple and also, Twitter and Facebook, for, however much credit you do or don't want to give them, taking stands like this. And maybe it's easier to take a stand after certain things erupt in violence, but I don't think tech has faced challenges, social challenges like they've seen recently, and it's fascinating to see the directions they're taking.
Yeah, it is. It really is. And I mean, being Canadian myself, I'm not always 100% in tune with everything that goes on in the U.S. But obviously, most of our news and stuff is pretty U.S. focused. But it's interesting to kind of see. I feel like tech, when you look at the social aspect of life, I feel like tech is really the tech industry as a whole is really in this like weird period right now where like there's a lot of conversations going on about breaking up big tech and antitrust lawsuits coming from kind of every which way, and it's affecting Apple, Google, Microsoft. It's kind of like all the big tech industries and companies, and it's interesting to see how that's also kind of all that stuff's ramping up at the same time that all this like social stuff is also ramping up, right? Like, once again, this is coming from maybe more a cynical point of view, but taking a stand on these things, regardless of which way a company goes, whether they, if you're talking politically, whether it's left or right or whatever, however you interpret it, they're fighting. I think a lot of these tech companies are realizing that they're fighting for an identity in a new age that they haven't had to fight for before. People weren't as socially conscious before, and it was more business as usual, but now it's like more than ever. I think people are looking at companies, and regardless of what company you're talking about, they're looking at people. They want to spend their money where their values align, whether that be whatever your values are. You want to find companies that support your values and you want to support them. And I think tech is now in this place where they're so big and they're so focused and there's so many conversations going around on them that they're going to do what they can and what they think is best to carve out that identity for people in this new age of social consciousness. So it's an interesting time for sure. And yeah, I mean, I'm happy Apple's doing this initiative, and I'm excited for the more announcements that I'm sure they will eventually give on this. And I agree with Garen, like the more you can get this into a younger age group too, think opportunities like this, because it's not like racial inequality starts at high school, like it kind of starts at the beginning of your life. So it's important to have programs like these, whether it's from Apple, governments, whatever, that kind of, hit all the age ranges, hit all the groups and everything. So
yeah,
we got to get better at that for sure.
It's not just about inequality. It's about,
totally.
It's about showing people that maybe are not traditionally aware of these kinds of careers, about that, what's out there, just giving people options.
100%.
People do what they know. I mean, that's why so many kids end up going into their parents' career fields, because that's what they see every day. They hear the stories at the dinner table about work, and that's just what they're familiar with. Maybe they've gone to, take your kid to work day, or that's everything they know. So by getting coding and computer careers into the hands and minds of very young people, you're showing them that there's this whole other career area where you can do these amazing things, maybe that you wouldn't even have heard of until you were already on a track where it was going to be very difficult to get into that at a later point in your life. I think college, it's great that they're going to do these things at the college level, but by then, for a lot of people, it's really too late.
Yeah,
totally.
Yeah, I also think it's doing this sort of thing publicly is a good sort of signal to potentially other employers that are out there, other than Apple, that are like, hey, look here.
Mhm.
Because, I mean, sometimes just holding up a giant neon sign to something is like, hey, there's this, look over here. It's a great way to raise awareness.
Absolutely.
All right. And that was really the only big Apple announcement this week. I think, some people may have thought that Apple would try to steal the CES thunder, and they had a privacy focused ad, I think, earlier in the week. But other than that, no AirTags, no Apple Car really. But there are a couple of late week Apple rumors that I do want us to talk about before we wrap up the show. The first one concerns everyone's favorite portable, the MacBook. So this is a new MacBook Pro rumor, and these are actually coming from two different places. Well, some of this is coming from two different places. Some of it's coming from fairly reliable Apple leaker Ming-Chi Kuo, and then also Mark Gurman over at Bloomberg. So evidently, we've got two MacBook Pros on the line, almost certainly sporting M series chips, whether they're M1s or what I will continually call the M1X. So it's sort of long rumored 14-inch MacBook Pro and a new 16-inch model that for some people fix all of the problems they've had with the MacBook Pro since 2016. It sounds like a dream computer for certain people. And one of those people is me, because one of the rumors of that this is the return of MagSafe.
I have to agree with you there. Everybody was so mad, including me, when they got rid of the MagSafe charger, because if you trip over that cord, you can destroy your computer.
So I have a bit of a story time, children. Gather around. Uncle Joe's story time. When I was in college, I got my first MacBook Pro. It was a 2008 model. I actually have it. I actually have it right here. It's old and dusty, but it's this. I'm holding up. This is, I think, early 2008, the last of these PowerBook style MacBook Pros. And the first night I had it. So one of the things that was sort of an epidemic almost at my school was we'd have these university issued computers, and they were, these trashy, basically spare part built laptops. But everyone at least once had the experience of having their computer flung across their dorm room or their apartment by someone who stepped on the cord and just ripped it out of there. And I kid you not, this first night I'm using this MacBook Pro, my roommate trips over the cord. It pops right out of my computer, and we both just stare at it for a solid minute. We would look at it, look back to each other, look at it. It's like, what? We had no intellectual concept of what had just happened or not happened, as it were. My computer was still on my lap, and it was wild. And so this report fills my heart with a lot of joy, both present and nostalgic.
Yeah, a lot of things that Apple took away at the time, everybody was upset, but now we can kind of see why. Like, I'm trying to think, like the head. I don't know. I guess people are still mad about the headphone jack. I don't know. I can't think of a good example of something that Apple took away that people are no longer salty about. But MagSafe, people are forever salty about. There's no better replacement for it. So I'm all for the MagSafe charger coming back.
Yeah, last year when they announced MagSafe for iPhone, I was like, and MagSafe has returned to the iPhone. It's on the iPhone now. It's not on the MacBook. And I was so, I was a little crestfallen that we didn't have a big old MacBook update.
Yeah. And, the Touch ID, like the home button on the phone, is something that when Apple took away, everyone was all upset. But most of us are used to that by now, and I at least appreciate the larger screen that you get by not having to take up half an inch at the bottom with a home button strip. So, but yeah,
for sure,
come back.
Yeah, MagSafe was such an elegant, simple solution to like a real world problem that happened all the time, and like no other company really did it. And then They kind of got rid. Yeah, I agree. Like it was the one thing when they got rid of it, I was like, okay, the move to USB-C at the time was kind of hard, and there's still some issues with that, but that's just as the whole industry shifts into a new, the new port and everything. That's just regular growing pains. But I was just like, why couldn't we find a way to make this happen? And then there are third-party solutions that work somewhat as well, but like I think Apple's
it's always better if Apple does it though.
Yeah, Apple's gonna do it, and if Apple brings us back, it's gonna be just as awesome as before, and it'll be with USB-C, which is great. So
I assume
it's got to be USB. It's got to be USB-C MagSafe charger, right?
Yeah,
I think, or you could call it Thunderbolt because it'll also be Thunderbolt.
Right.
True. Thunderbolt 4. Yeah.
Yeah, I would assume that these computers, unlike the first MacBook or first M1 Macs, have 4 Thunderbolt ports, and that's the other thing. There's supposed to be more ports on these computers and no touch bar.
Yeah, how do you guys feel about the no touch bar?
I have a touch bar computer, and I'm 100% fine with it going away. I mean, I use it occasionally, but I never really came up with a reason why anybody needs it. When I worked at Apple, we sold both touch bar and non-touch bar computer, and people would always say, well, should I get the one with the touch bar? Like, do I need the touch bar? What's the touch bar for? Does it add anything? And my answer is always like, no, not really. I mean, it's kind of fun. It's kind of neat. It's kind of fun. And I would show them a few tricks on it, and I'd be like, see, yeah, no, you don't need it. So it can go away.
And obviously it would have been more controversial to do this, but if Apple had gone, just whole hog here and just made the entire keyboard area a touch screen that morphed, that, some kind of Star Trek computer or an iPhone.
The problem is touch typing. You can't touch type if there's nothing to touch.
Hence controversial. But, if they had been able to do that, then I think some, touch applications on the Mac would be in a different state, and more developers would have written to it, but they didn't. It's just this kind of, I've always seen it as this kind of half measure, and I don't have one personally on my MacBook because my MacBook is still ancient, but it's literally became vintage last year. But yeah, I don't know. I don't really see much of a point to it versus the what is it called? What are they called? Utility keys. I always call them utility keys. The F-row.
Yeah, I use mine. I use mine for Touch ID. I use it for volume. I don't really use it for much else.
Well, see, and the MacBook Air shows us you can have Touch ID on a Mac without having the touch bar because it has Touch ID.
Oh, of course. I'm sure they're not going to take away any functionality. They're just going to change how you do it. Just fine.
Yeah, I'm really excited, actually. Now, these are apparently supposed to be coming in Q3, so second half of the year, probably in the fall. Is what it sounds like. Maybe in October. 45-minute October event.
Yeah, they usually release the hot new MacBooks after the back to school specials. It's
either that or during WWDC is when we'll but that's been fewer and farther between in recent years. Like the first Retina MacBook Pro launched in 2012 at WWDC, but since then it's every so often. But Karen's right. Mostly it's after back to school for some reason.
Because I sent my son to college with no computer at all because he wanted to wait. We knew what was coming and he wanted to wait for the new one to come out. So he went 2 months without a computer.
What does he have now?
Well, now he has one. He has excuse me. That's already his old computer. He's since graduated and gotten a computer from work.
Of course.
But in both cases, it was MacBook Pro.
Mm. Yeah.
And don't forget, these new MacBooks are going to be Apple Silicon, which are obviously super
they're going to be sweet.
They're going to be amazing. They're going to be so fast.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting. I think this comment came out today. The new Intel CEO was talking about how, they called Apple a lifestyle company, first of all. which I thought was hilarious coming from Intel. This lifestyle company is, building rings around you with their chips. How embarrassing is that for you? It really has a lot of, PC guys aren't just going to come in here and get this right energy to it. And look how that turned out, 13, 14, oh my God, it's 14 years ago now.
Yeah.
We're coming up on the 14th anniversary of the iPhone announcement. If we haven't already passed it, I state again, time is an illusion. It's not real. But yeah, it's the same sort of energy. And if you can design these chips better chips Intel, why don't you do it? There's a reason Apple's gone with their own silicon. Everything I hear about it, because again, I haven't used one, says that Apple silicon is amazing. And I'm really curious to see what it'll do now. So now we have the entry level machines. What's it going to do on the step up? What's it going to do on desktop, on like full on desktops like an iMac or a Mac Pro? Because those are coming eventually.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Yes. All right. We have one more juicy rumor from actually this morning that I want to share with everybody. This is about the so-called folding iPhone. Now, for a while, we've been hearing, the folding iPhone is going to be like the, what is it? The Microsoft one, the Duo, that is 2 screens on a hinge. Well, now this new report from John Prosser says that a current prototype is a single folding screen, like the Galaxy Fold, or I don't know, perhaps maybe more of the Galaxy Z Flip.
It's hard to believe that it wouldn't get like creased over time.
Yeah, and they do. I mean, they get creased almost immediately. The current ones get creased almost immediately.
Yeah, I don't like that. That would bother me a lot. I can't stand for there to be one single micro scratch on my screen. I can't handle a crease down the middle of it.
Don't look at my phone.
Awkwardly looks at his
I won't. I won't look at the phone.
Yeah, for me, foldable phones, don't get me wrong. I love that technology is going this way, and I am totally on board for it to keep going down this track. But I'm years out from really considering switching to a foldable phone. It's just I don't see how it's currently better or more useful, at least to my life personally, than how I use my, slab phone.
Well, I do, because I like to carry a small phone. I have small pockets. I carry a small purse. But I would like to look at a big screen. So there's always that internal fight. Like, do I get a bigger phone where I can actually really see more on my screen? Or do I get a smaller phone, which I can actually carry and hold in one hand and use in one hand, where I feel like a foldable phone or a screen that expands somehow. I mean, we saw at CES, some of these other companies are doing the one that sort of like grows. I'm not describing.
Yeah, the rollable phones.
Yeah, the rollable phones. Yeah, I kind of like the idea of that, because I like to read on my phone. I like to watch videos on my phone. Like, those things would be a lot nicer to do on a bigger screen. So I definitely see the use case for it. I want the technology to be really good before.
Sure. I guess I kind of misspoke, and you're right. Like, I see the use case. I understand the thought process. Like, have a smaller device you can carry around, but then, oh, look, it's a bigger device when you want to do, watch things or do other activities or draw or what you may have you. But I just the technology isn't at a point where I think I just don't think it's there. You know what I mean? And I don't know exactly how many years it'll be until I personally feel like, oh, it's there now. I'm ready to jump on this train, but it's still a few years out for me to really kind of embrace it. One thing I'm excited about when Apple eventually releases one or announces one is that, because the one thing about the Android foldables we've seen is since Android's kind of a bit of a mess when it comes to development, since the development scene's so big and there's so much third party going on, that apps don't conform properly to the dual screens or the one continuous screen. And when Apple comes out, at least all the Apple apps are going to work flawlessly on that stuff, right? They're going to split so well. And obviously third party apps is a different story, because that's on developers to sort of include that UI and that stuff. But Apple is going to come up with a way more, at least in my opinion, it's going to be a way more streamlined and a way more elegant way of processing that than I think some of the, Samsungs and Google, and just general Android sphere has already. So
that's the Apple way is to not release something until they get it right. And if that means scrapping something that they had already said they were gonna release,
Air power.
I would rather they do.
Oh no!
Oh no,
Karen. She's frozen. Oh no! This happens every so often. Well, we'll hear the end of Karen's thought when she gets back. But
yeah, I guess so.
One thing I wanted to bring up, and this is obvious. This is a personal observation. Obviously, it's going to be different if, say, you carry your iPhone in a bag or a purse.
Mm-hmm.
Right now with foldables, the thickness factor is it's not desirable for me.
Yeah. That's another good point. Is just
two phones stuck together.
Mm-hmm. And in some ways, like the Microsoft like Duo Hinge is like the better way to go in that respect, rather than like the screen that folds over, because then you're obviously going to have a space, because like we don't have the technology right now where you can just flatten a screen. That just doesn't exist. It needs some sort of curvature or some sort of, to keep the connectors and wires, and you know what I'm trying to say.
No, exactly.
It needs to have like a thickness to it. And that's why like part of me is like, although the Microsoft Surface Duo had other issues, I always kind of liked the design of it. Like I know it's not maybe in the traditional sense, it's not a foldable phone because it's not a foldable screen. It's kind of more of like an enhanced like Palm Pilot / flippy phone sort of thing. But I was always more endeared to that form factor, at least right now, because when it's closed up, it's actually something that's not too unwieldy, in my opinion, or like much of a weird shape. It seems like it'd be an easier form factor to get cases for, and things like that, rather than this kind of like rounded, folded edge that a lot of like these foldable phones are getting. So that's sort of my opinion. But there are issues with the Microsoft Duo, design as well. So it's like there's no like, that's why I say it's not there yet. It's like, to me, it's just not quite as appealing as it needs to be to really, really fit into my life.
Yeah, I'm with both of you on the issue of the crease. I want Apple to spend a lot of time on getting that crease out of that screen. And that's something that Apple wants to solve, because Apple.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. I think we've come down to it, folks. It's near the end of our hour. So I want to say thanks to Luke and Karen for joining me. Karen, as always, Luke, it was great to have you on.
Yeah. Anytime. It's been fun.
I want to say thanks to our live listeners. As always, this comment section is always great. And it's always nice to see everybody here. I also want to say thanks to our, not so live listeners, our anyone who listens after the show goes into their podcatcher of choice. Of course, we do this for the audience. We wouldn't do it without you. And I also want to say thanks to Jim Metzendorf, our editor extraordinaire, who always makes us sound so wonderful. Better than I think I sound. Anyway, and that will be the show this week. Check out iMore CES coverage. It's, especially some certain videos done by certain Luke and Steven. They knocked it out of the park. Yeah, so everyone have a great week. We'll see you next time. And this has been the iMore Show.